My name is Claire, and I'm 28 years old. After finishing a grueling 12-hour shift in the ER, most nurses would have gone straight home, collapsed on the couch, maybe reheated leftovers before sinking into sleep. But not me. Instead, I found myself steering my car through the dimly lit streets of Cleveland, Ohio, toward my parents' house. It was Tuesday night. Family dinner night. And even though every muscle in my body screamed for rest, I couldn't stop myself. A part of me still hoped, foolishly, that maybe tonight would be different. Maybe tonight, they would finally look at me and see more than just the daughter who never measured up. The smell of disinfectant clung stubbornly to my scrubs, a constant reminder of where I'd been, holding pressure on gunshot wounds, coaxing breath back into fragile lungs, fighting for lives that balanced on the edge. My colleagues at the hospital respected me. Some even looked up to me. But in my parents' world, none of it mattered. In their eyes, everything I did dimmed beside the brilliance of my older brother, Daniel. Daniel was 31, an engineer with a shiny new promotion, a house in the suburbs already lined up, and a picture-perfect wife named Melissa. He was their pride, their proof that they had raised someone successful. Then there was me, the nurse who never married, who still rented, who never seemed to shine brightly enough in their eyes. As I pulled into their driveway, I noticed the familiar lineup. Dad's old Chevy, Mom's beige sedan, Daniel's silver SUV parked proudly at the center, and Melissa's white car tucked neatly beside it. My chest tightened. Their presence meant my role tonight would be predictable, invisible. I sat in the car for a moment, fingers gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. Memories flickered. Birthdays forgotten. Achievements dismissed. Dinners where my words disappeared before they even left my lips. I thought of turning the key, driving away, sparing myself the ache. But obligation is a heavy chain. It tugged me toward that front door. When Dad opened it, his eyes went straight to the wine bottle in my hand. "Perfect," he said. "Daniel was just telling us about work." Not a word about me. Inside, Mom barely glanced up before remarking, "You're late." The clock read 3 minutes past 6. And just like that I was reminded. I could save lives all day. But here, in this house, I was still just second best. What I didn't realize then was that this Tuesday night wouldn't fade into the same blur of disappointments. This dinner would break something inside me. And from those shards, something sharper, stronger, and utterly unrecognizable would rise. I wasn't always so aware of the hierarchy in my family, but the signs had been there since childhood, written in the smallest moments. When I was 16, I spent an entire night helping our neighbors after their house caught fire. I soothed their toddler while firefighters battled the flames, keeping the child calm until dawn. The local paper even wrote a small piece about it, calling me a quiet hero. I came home expecting at least a smile from Mom and Dad, maybe a word of pride. Instead, they brushed it off with, "That's nice, Claire, but Daniel's football recruiter is visiting tomorrow. We need to focus on that." That was the rhythm of my life. Daniel's achievements, a touchdown, a B+ on a physics exam, his name in a college brochure, were paraded like banners. Mine? Overshadowed, minimized, or worse, ignored entirely. My 16th birthday came and went without so much as a card. They were too busy helping Daniel prep for a scholarship interview. I spent that evening alone in my room, candles unlit, cake uneaten. The pattern continued into adulthood. When I graduated nursing school with honors, they attended but spent most of the ceremony fussing about how Daniel couldn't make it because of a critical work trip. At the dinner afterward, my diploma lay flat on the table while the phone was passed around for everyone to hear Daniel's latest update about his job. I told myself excuses back then, that they were distracted, that it wasn't intentional, that love sometimes looks different than we expect, but deep down, I knew. I was never going to be Daniel. And yet, I kept showing up. I remembered every birthday, every anniversary, every holiday. I rearranged my shifts to attend Thanksgiving, even when it meant working double on Christmas Eve. I drove Dad to his cardiology appointments, taught Mom how to use her smartphone, and handled their insurance calls when they couldn't untangle the paperwork. Still, my presence was taken for granted, my sacrifices invisible. I kept hoping, maybe if I gave enough, bent enough, proved myself enough, they'd finally see me. But the truth was harder to face. Some people will never see you, no matter how brightly you shine. And I didn't yet know that the cruelest proof of that truth was waiting for me, just around the corner at the dinner table. The smell of pot roast and buttered rolls hit me as I stepped into the dining room, my brother's favorites, of course. Every dish on the table seemed like a love letter to Daniel. Even the Brussels sprouts I'd hated since childhood sat proudly in a serving bowl, waiting for his plate. My stomach tightened, but I forced myself to smile as I set down the cake and wine I'd brought. My chair, as always, sat slightly outside the circle, an unspoken reminder that I was part of the family, but not quite centered in it. Daniel's booming voice filled the room as he described his promotion, the new responsibilities, the company car. Mom and Dad leaned forward, hanging on every word, their eyes glowing with pride. Melissa, his perfect suburban wife, nodded and added bits about their house hunting adventure. I tried to weave myself into the conversation. When the topic turned to electric cars, I mentioned a patient who had suffered severe electrical burns and how our team treated him. Silence followed, the kind that clings and stings. Dad cleared his throat and redirected the talk back to Daniel's salary package. Later, Melissa announced that they were considering a property near the lake. Mom clapped her hands like a child at Christmas. So responsible, always planning ahead, she gushed. I thought of my modest apartment with its peeling paint and paper-thin walls. No one asked about it. Still, I tried again. I shared how I'd revived a man whose heart had stopped for 4 minutes, a miracle moment in the ER that had left me shaken but proud. Melissa gave me a polite smile. That must have been terrifying, she said, before tilting her head back toward Daniel. Mom didn't even look up. Instead, she asked Daniel about his company's expansion to California. I stared at my plate, chewing Brussels sprouts I couldn't stand, wondering why I bothered. I was a nurse who had literally saved lives, yet in this house, my existence seemed less important than the square footage of Daniel's future home. Melissa leaned closer, lowering her voice just enough to sound conspiratorial, but not cruel. You must be so tired, Claire. It's hard, I'm sure. Keeping up with that single lifestyle. Her words dripped with pity disguised as concern. My lips pressed tight, a bitter taste in my mouth that wasn't from the food. Every laugh that erupted at Daniel's stories cut sharper than the last. I felt myself disappearing, fading into the wallpaper like a shadow. But somewhere deep inside, anger was building, and I sensed it wouldn't stay buried much longer. Dinner dragged on, each bite heavier than the last. Conversation circled Daniel like a carousel, his salary, his new car, Melissa's plans for decorating their future home. My fork scraped against the plate, too loud, but no one noticed. I was background noise. Then Daniel, casual as ever, leaned back in his chair and said, You know, Mom. Dad. You're both getting older. Don't worry, Melissa and I will step up when the time comes. Mom's smile bloomed instantly. Oh, Daniel. Always so responsible. Dad nodded, pride in his eyes. That's our boy. Then his gaze flicked toward me, the warmth evaporating like mist. Unlike some people who are still figuring life out. The words stung, slicing deeper than they should have. I swallowed hard. With all due respect, Dad, I'm a registered nurse. If anyone here is prepared to handle medical care, it's me. Melissa tilted her head, her voice syrupy sweet. But Claire, with those long shifts and, well, without a husband to help, how could you really manage? My father laughed, sharp and dismissive. She can barely manage her own life. Still renting, still single, no savings. How could we depend on you? My nails dug crescents into the wooden chair. I wanted to scream that I had carried them for years, rearranging shifts to drive Dad to the ER at 2 a.m., holding Mom's hand during her kidney stone surgery, managing their endless prescriptions and appointments. But my voice came out as a whisper. I've carried this family more than you realize. Mom tilted her head, her tone cutting like glass. Daniel thinks of everyone, not just himself. You've always thought only of you. The air grew thick, suffocating. Then Dad leaned forward, his voice rising just enough to shake the chandelier above us. Maybe we'd be proud of you if you gave us something to be proud of. The room tilted. My chest squeezed tight. And then, like a knife slipped between ribs, he muttered the words that stole the air from my lungs. Sometimes, I wish you were never born. Mom gasped, but didn't deny it. Her lips trembled, and then she whispered, It's harsh, but yes. Sometimes I've thought the same. The grandfather clock ticked once, twice, echoing in the silence. 28 years of clawing for scraps of love crumbled in an instant. But strangely, instead of breaking, I felt something shift inside me. A strange, icy calm slid over my skin. If they truly wished I'd never been born, Then maybe it was time to show them what life without me really looked like. The chandelier light seemed to tremble above us. Or maybe it was just me, vibrating with a rage I had never allowed myself to feel. My father's words still echoed in my ears, but instead of crushing me, they sharpened me. I pushed my chair back slowly, the sound screeching across the hardwood floor. Everyone froze. I picked up my wine glass, holding it aloft as if making a toast. My voice was steady, even cold. You wish I'd never been born? Perfect. Then you won't need me when you're sick, when the medications get confusing, when the bills pile up. You'll have Daniel. You'll have Melissa. You'll have anyone but me. My father's face flushed, but his confidence faltered when I leaned forward, eyes locked on his. Let's review what this so-called failure has done for you. Who drove you to the ER at 2 a.m. when your chest felt like it was splitting? Who sat with Mom for 8 hours when kidney stones left her sobbing? Who organized every one of your medications, explained test results, and stood by your side when you were too afraid to hear the doctor's words? Silence. Their eyes darted away, shame creeping in, though no one spoke. Me, I said, my voice sharp as broken glass. The daughter you just erased with one sentence, the nurse you called unreliable, the woman you dismissed as nothing. Mom's tears slid down her cheeks. Daniel finally opened his mouth. Claire, come on. But I cut him off. No, Daniel. You don't get to fix this with a smooth word or a promise you'll never keep. Because here's the truth. I pulled a folded document from my purse, one I'd updated weeks ago after another dinner like this left me hollow. I laid it flat on the table. Medical power of attorney. It no longer has my name on it. Since you trust Daniel more, he can take the calls at 3 a.m, he can juggle the schedules, he can sit in the waiting rooms, because I'm done. The color drained from Dad's face. Mom sobbed harder, Melissa's hands clenched in her lap, her perfect composure cracking. I set my napkin neatly on the plate. My heart was pounding, but my voice didn't waver. You wanted life without me? Congratulations. It starts tonight. And with that, I stood. No one stopped me this time. No one dared. Their silence followed me out the door, heavier than chains. But for the first time, those chains were breaking. The night air outside felt like ice on my skin, yet it was the cleanest breath I'd taken in years. I walked to my car with steady steps, not looking back. For once, I wasn't rehearsing excuses or swallowing tears. I was free. Raw. Trembling. But free. The first week was disorienting. No Tuesday dinners. No Sunday calls to check if Dad had taken his meds. My phone stayed silent, except for the occasional text from Daniel. Can we talk? I never answered. The absence of obligation felt strange, like phantom pain from an amputated limb. I almost dialed once, but stopped myself. I reminded myself of Dad's words. I wish you were never born. That memory was enough to steady my hand. Gradually, peace began to slip in. I signed the lease on a brighter apartment downtown, a place with tall windows and light that spilled in every morning like forgiveness. On my second night there, I visited the shelter and adopted a rescue dog, a gray mutt with cautious eyes and a crooked ear. I named him Milo. For the first time, someone was waiting for me when I came home, and his joy was unconditional. At work, everything blossomed. With the weight of my family's constant criticism gone, I poured myself fully into my patients. I joined a mentorship program for new nurses, and my supervisor urged me to apply for leadership training. Weeks later, I was invited to speak at a regional medical conference about emergency protocols, something I never would have imagined for myself before. When my supervisor introduced me as one of the best emergency nurses I've ever worked with, I felt seen in a way I'd been starved for my entire life. Even outside the hospital, I began rebuilding. I joined a hiking group, where no one asked me why I wasn't married yet, or compared me to a brother. On those trails, surrounded by strangers who became friends, every step felt like mine alone. I started therapy too, peeling back the years of self-doubt layered over my skin. My therapist once told me, sometimes, walking away isn't betrayal, it's survival. At night, Milo curled against my side as I journaled. The silence no longer felt empty. It felt earned. And though flashes of that dinner sometimes crept into my dreams, I always woke up with the same realization. Leaving wasn't the hardest thing I'd ever done. Staying had been. Months slipped by, each one lighter than the last. I no longer carried the constant dread of walking into my parents' house, only to vanish into Daniel's shadow. My life felt like it was finally mine. Then one afternoon, a letter arrived. The envelope was thin, the handwriting shaky and unfamiliar at first. But when I opened it, my chest tightened. It was from my mother. Only 12 words, scrawled in blue ink. Thank you for helping when we didn't deserve it. I'm sorry. I love you. I sat at my kitchen table with Milo's head resting on my knee, staring at those words. For years, I would have clung to them like a lifeline, rushing back, desperate to believe that maybe now they saw me. But not this time. This time, I didn't feel the need to reply. I didn't need to prove anything. I didn't need to beg for crumbs. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it into my journal. Not as an invitation back, but as proof. Proof that truth always echoes louder than silence. Because here's what I had finally learned. You can spend your entire life begging for love from people incapable of giving it. Or you can turn away, take that love, and give it to yourself. You can stay the family doormat, or you can walk out the door and choose freedom. The night of that dinner, when my father told me he wished I had never been born, I thought my world was ending. In reality, it was just beginning. For the first time, I understood that my worth wasn't measured by their approval. My value wasn't conditional. It never had been. Now, when I walk into the hospital, patients smile because I'm there. Colleagues listen when I speak. Friends invite me along because they enjoy my company, not out of obligation. And at home, Milo greets me at the door as if I'm the most important person in the world, because to him, I am. Looking back, I realize that night was the moment I finally chose myself. And every single day since, I've chosen again. Have you ever had to walk away from family to finally find your worth? Share your story in the comments below. And remember, you are never invisible.